Okay,
It's
cool.
your screen now.
All right, hello. Great. Yeah, so people should be able to see me playing Snack. No step on Snack. This is part of StartOS, my favorite feature. So today, yeah, we're going to be going through. Last time we set up a Bitcoin Core node. Sorry, not Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Knots, of course. We set up a node and went through all the configuration options for how a miner might want to set stuff up. I'm just going to die here so I can actually think. All right, there we go. Saving high score. So, yeah, today we're going to take a bit of a tangent from that and talk about setting up Datum on an Umbrel or a Start9 server. Very sadly, my Start9 node didn't sync in time for this, but I'm still going to go through setup anyway. I just won't be able to actually mine, and we won't be able to actually run Datum. So I'm just going to start with StartOS and go through all that. We do recommend buying a Start9 server. The Purism box they sell, the Server Pure, is probably the best hardware you could choose to run as a Bitcoiner because it has the Intel management engine disabled. So there's a reason they call it the Pure. We've struggled for a long time here to come up with something we could recommend hardware-wise for people to run, and that's about the best thing out there. But this is running on a Raspberry Pi, and it's a Raspberry Pi 4, and it's just taken forever to sync the blockchain. I'm pretty close. I'm 95% through, but Datum won't work unless your node is 100% synced. So let's start with how you'd install it. So you'd go to the marketplace and you go to the community registry, assuming you have a Start9 server and you're all set up. You'd go to the community registry because that's where Knots is at the moment. It will be in a better place with the incoming 036. Then you'll be able to just pick a flavor of what Bitcoin you want. So at that point, you can switch between Core and Knots a bit more seamlessly. If you're running Core already on a Start9 server, you can just drag and drop Bitcoin Knots in from the repo, the GitHub repo. You can just download from Leo Half his Bitcoin Knots build, and then just drag and drop it in this side loader service thing. You can just click here and drag it into the window here, and it will just install over the top of Core and replace it. You won't need to reinstall the blockchain or anything. Or to re-download it. All that's good. But if you're just starting fresh, just go to Bitcoin within the community registry and install Bitcoin Knots. Wait for it to start. Wait for it to sync, and then do the same with DATUM Gateway. You would just install this too. And I think I'm actually gonna uninstall that just so I can show you kind of from the get-go what that looks like. So guys, let me know like where I should be looking for chat. Like if you all need to poke me for some reason, I'm looking at the signal. Just let me know if I'm looking in the wrong place. Yeah. So you'd go to Marketplace, you'd go to Bitcoin, and you'd go to Datum, and you'd just install it. And watch it install standard way. It's probably going to take a while. This is a Raspberry Pi 4. I should mention Start9 don't sell Raspberry Pi 4s anymore or recommend running Bitcoin related stuff on them because 2023 was brutal and basically ruined the ability for Raspberry Pi 4 people to run Bitcoin anymore, which is sad, and we all know the reason why, but that's not what this stream is about. So once this is installed, I'll go through some of the intricacies of getting Datum running. And yeah, please, anyone that wants to ask questions, you can start right now. They'll be highlighted to me by JD, who's producing this whole thing. And I'm happy to go into it. So as usual, you'll go into needs config. When you've installed it, you can press configure. It's going to insist on having a Bitcoin address because Datum requires there be a valid Bitcoin address for it to even work. So I'm just going to go on mempool space and just grab, I'll grab Antpool's address, whatever they use to pay themselves. It's got to be this one. I'll just grab that and stick it in. If you're mining on Ocean, This primary Coinbase tag here will be overwritten with the word ocean no matter what you do, even if you leave it as what the default was. But in this case, yeah, we're going to mine on ocean today. So you can set it to ocean or it will be overwritten with that, even if you don't set it to ocean. The secondary Coinbase tag, that's the fun part. So if I go on ocean.xyz, go to the dashboard, we can see the last block mined was by Electron Energy, before that Penguin, before that Barefoot. If we click on this, if we click on this and go to the actual block on mempool space, that's the name you see of the miner. And that's the fun part. That's what is in this text here. So if I set that to Barefoot mining and I find a block, that's what you'll see here on mempool space, which is super cool. And it will also mention that it's an ocean block though, because you're still pooled mining. So in this case, we'll just call it Datum demo. And if I find a block during this, then, I mean, that would be hilarious, but you never know. It's possible. API, this you can just leave as the default. That's, I'll explain what that's about a bit later. And that will be embellished somewhat. Logs, you can set these to whatever you like. There's an explanation here for how verbose you want the logs to be. This is what you'll see in the console, so it makes sense for them to not be super verbose. There's also logging to a file that gets written inside a directory inside the datum container inside StartOS. You can have that be more verbose because, like, if you're down in there, that means something's gone wrong, and it would be good to know what that is. So you can set that to 0 or 1, or just turn it's off by default. But if you turn it on, you might want it to be 1 or 0, while the console logs with a bit of a higher number to give you just more high-level info. Then there's datum itself. The pool host set by default, that is what to point at with datum. That's where you point at ocean, and that's where you're going to submit shares. Datum itself is going to verify the shares, and it's going to reach out to this in order to get Coinbase splits, and that's what it uses to make work that you point at your miners. The pool port, again, that's these two things work together. The default values are what you want. If you wanted to, if you didn't want to pool mine, you can just delete this and delete that and delete that, presumably. And then you would turn off pooled mining only. That's how you can go into lotto mining mode. You would just delete this. I mean, I think that's all that's necessary is just to delete this. Ignore what I said about these two. You can just delete the pool host and turn off pooled mining only. And then you are just mining and getting all the rewards from any block you find, and they will all go to whatever the address is that you put up here. So all that being the case, I'll just...
In that case, you're only getting it if you find a block.
Yeah, you're only getting rewards if you find a block. You're not splitting with other ocean miners at that point. So this all is... I'm going to go more into details again. I'll go through these config options again when I go through Umbrel. Unfortunately, I can't start this. If I start this, it's going to complain because Bitcoin is not synced yet, which is a shame. So it's just going to... These health checks are going to try for a minute, and then it's probably going to fail. It might not fail, which will be really confusing. Let's go into logs and see what it's saying. Yeah, so it cannot fetch new template because Bitcoin is just not ready yet. You see it started here with the correct git commit and all that. So it's going to try for a little while to get a new template from Bitcoin, which is still in initial block download. So it's going to... Eventually, this is going to make Datum choke. Yeah, there you go. It choked and panicked, and now Datum is just going to go into a starting state. That's all expected. Don't try and run Datum when you don't have a synced Bitcoin node, because you won't be able to do any useful work anyway. So we're going to stop that, but we're going to look at the instructions here because this is pretty important. In 0.3.5, which is what version of StartOS this is, typically when you're a miner at home, you want to point your miner to something like that's a bit like, this is just an S9 I have on my LAN here. You want to point it to something like Stratum, TCP, and then it would be some sort of local IP address, something like this, whatever the Start9 box actually is on your router, and then the actual port would be this. But in this, and then you put the Bitcoin address in here. But in this case, with StartOS, you can't directly access Datum, so you have to set up a proxy, because the Datum service itself would be, if I was to click Launch UI, unfortunately, I can't do that either. But it's all done by MDNS. There's no IP or port specifically for the Datum service, so we have to set up a proxy. This won't be necessary in StartOS 0.36, but it is in 0.35. Frustratingly, but it's 6 lines you have to paste into terminal. And if you go into the instructions in the Datum service, you can go down, scroll all the way down, and here's what to do. And just to show you how simple it is, I'll just show you. I'll run through it quickly, and then answer.local should just SSH in fine. Right, so now we're in here. We're going to type in these commands here. So the first is sudo I. Then we do this, which might be a little bit slow, to be honest. This number doesn't really mean a lot, but this command makes it so that anything you do, like apt install some, something, or, change a config file, it will persist across restarts. StartOS is a very strange Linux distro, and if you start apt installing things and then restart the box, it will go back to whatever it was before restart, or before you put it in. So this is hopefully almost done. I don't know when this will finish. Hopefully it won't take too long. I haven't done it on a Pi 4 for a while. On the Pure, which is what I'd recommend people buy. And use our link, by the way. We have a discount link. Ocean and Start9 are working together, so you can get the discount if you type in Ocean somewhere on the website, or just go to oceanxyz/docs/lightning, and you'll see a link to the Start9 discount store. All right,
Ocean. Also directly go to ocean.xyz /Start9 now. Yeah. Also just directly go to ocean.xyz/Start9 now.
Yeah, that's great. We got a new link. I'll pop that up here. Just for anyone watching, you can go here, and that will give you a discount for Start9 stuff. Do strongly recommend it. Don't be afraid of setting up Datum on here. It's really good. We have miners with tens of petahash using Start9, and it's so far so good. Why is someone asking about rum in the chat?
We got a question on the screen too.
Where?
For later in setup, can a single Datum server provide templates to clients using different pay-to addresses, or do all clients need to be using the same username?
No, they don't. So here is, you have this config option all the way down at the bottom. I hate it when it does that. Ugh. All right, so you have this pull pass full users config option, which is on by default. And what that means is if I have one miner with address A dot worker name, I can add another one, which would be address B dot worker name. And on the Ocean website, we can see that, those would show up as 2 different addresses. So you can mine to 2 different addresses using different miners. Obviously, I'm doing it in the same miner here, But that is permitted by having this pool pass full users thing. And if that's the case, this address up here in the mining settings is nothing more than a fallback. This address won't get used. If this address happens to be the same as what's in your mining UI, that doesn't matter. So this address is what will.
I think I think this only overrides what's in the settings if they're doing pooled mining. I think for lottery mining, it would still use the single address that's configured.
Correct.
Yeah. So when lottery mining, this is the address that matters, and it doesn't really particularly matter what's inside your miner UI. When mining on Ocean or using a datum pool to split rewards, the address in the miner matters unless you turn off pool pass full users. Then you can just put worker names inside here, and then the address up here will be what dominates. But in default configuration, when you first set up Datum, you're going to pool mine on Ocean, and this address is going to do nothing more than be a fallback for if something goes wrong and you start solo mining or non-pooled mining. But that won't happen unless you disable this. By default, what's supposed to happen with Datum is, like I mentioned, you're going to pool mine on Ocean, and if something was to go wrong with Ocean, the fact that this is on by default, pool mining only, just means your Datum server goes down, and then your miners all switch over to whatever your backup pool is, which is probably a sensible default, which is why we did it that way. Yeah, I do have that set up on the StreamYard thing, but I'd rather just, if you don't mind sticking the questions in the Signal, guys, rather than the StreamYard, that would help me. All right.
On that point, if your miner supports having a backup pool, it would make sense to have it back up to the centralized down you stay on Ocean.
Yeah, so you can start with, in this case, naively, this is me pointing at my Datum machine with a, then I could also just back up to, supposing my Datum went bad, I could just point to, and that would be back to Ocean-made templates at that point. And I could use the same address in this case. And then, my Datum went down. And now I'm, I'm not making my own blocks anymore. I'm not solo mining anymore. So I failed over to just mining on Ocean, where Ocean makes the templates. So that would be what this would be. This is how you would set up an S9 miner to do that. Is that well explained, or am I confusing people? It's a bit weird having no feedback here. So yeah, let's go back to the instructions in Datum, and this is finally done, this command. So we've run 2 of the 6 commands. This is the 3rd one, and this is us installing simple proxy. That should be relatively quick. And what this does is it allows your miner to reach out to the Start9 box, and then it relays what the miner is. It allows the miner to talk to Datum, basically, because you can't reach Datum via IP and port. It's only reachable by a .local, and .locals are not, MDNS is not understood by ant miners, so or Tor addresses, right? So I can't go in here and write like, my Start9 Datum service .onion. I can't do that because there is no Tor on an Antminer, and I couldn't do the same with .local either. It just doesn't understand it. It needs an IP and a port, and 0.3.5 in StartOS is limited for that. It will be fixed in 0.3.6. You could just type in, Datum service IP address with a port. But at the moment, that's not a thing in StartOS. So we have to set up this proxy. And we're halfway through doing it already. So next we take this. We've installed simple proxy already. So that should be in there. Yeah, it is. So now we paste this in. Then we enable it. This is just a service that will always run. And then we exit. I'm kind of hesitant to do that because it's probably going to create an issue on the box, but I think we're done with Start9 for now anyway, so let's do it. And I should hear some beeping behind me. This is going to shut down now. And while it does all that, I'm going to transition over to the Umbrel box, which is synced. This one I did on a Raspberry Pi 5, so with an NVMe, so it synced really nice and quick in under a day. And this has Datum installed on it. So switching over to Umbrel now. Maybe a good moment to pause and ask if anyone has any sort of Start9 specific questions. Apologies for not being able to do an actual demo and get this S9 mining on the Start9, but like I said, the blockchain, we didn't have the chance to sync it prior to this demo. It took over a week and it still didn't manage to do it. That's not StartOS's fault. It's just the fact that Raspberry Pi 4s now suck for trying to run a Bitcoin node. It doesn't look like there's any questions, so I'll just proceed.
The question nobody else did.
Go for it.
How did you get the IP to put in the miner?
So go into your router and just look for the IP of the Start9 box. So in this case, if I go in here, it will even be in, helpfully, if you go to the System tab in your Start9 and press About. I would rather not have shown this onion address, but hopefully everything's secure here. This is the local IP of, of this particular box, 192.168.0.79. And now the box is disconnected because it's restarting. And that's probably going to throw me into rolling forward now, so there's no hope that box syncs today. You can get the IP address helpfully inside Start9 itself. It will tell you what its local IP is. So what that is, this local IP here, that's what you take and put inside your miner. So I would just take that and go like that. Whoops, it didn't copy. What did you say?
What is the column that has the IP in that About page? There's a label on it.
This is if it's connected, this.
And 0. Okay.
Yeah, that's where you'll see the IP address. That's the local IP address, and that's what you need, right? You can't connect to this, unfortunately, because Ant miners don't understand .local, nor do any miners that I know of. But yeah, so you take that IP address, which I can copy, and it for some reason it's not pasting. All right, there we go. So that's the Start9 box. Then we take the simple proxy IP, which is the default datum port 23334. And that's it. And then we would put our Bitcoin address. It would need to be a valid Bitcoin address, otherwise Datum will get upset. And then you can add a worker name if you want. You don't need to do that. If you add a worker name, it's gonna, if I wanted to mine to this address and I wanted to be, I'll show you what happens when the website loads. So if I wanted to mine to this address up here, and I wanted to be this worker here, then I would just go here, take the address, and then take the worker name. Man, these are some long worker names. Let's click on it. I shouldn't have used such a huge user. Someone asks about the static IP address. That's not whether the address is static or not. That's not up to Start9. Give it a static IP address for sure if you can, locally, because that's going to help. Otherwise, if your Start9 box gets restarted, it might be given a new local IP, and then you'll have to tell your miner to point to the new IP. But anyway, so this is what you put in there. That's the worker name. That's the Bitcoin address. Now this S9, if this datum on the Start9 was capable of running, would mine to this worker here, and it would mine to this address, and it would be labeled as this worker, right? Yeah, so this Start9 will have a new IP address when I restart it, because I haven't, it's just using DHCP. It does have this is connecting over Wi-Fi too. That I wasn't, that surprises me actually. But anyway, yeah, so this is all, I'm not able to actually mine on here, as I've said, because I can't get, we're rolling forward. All right, rest in peace to this particular Bitcoin node. Man, it went back 7,000 blocks. That's going to take like 2 days to recover from that. That sucks. Yeah. So yeah, if we're all good, that should round up the Start9. I can go in here and SSH in again, and I should be able to type. I can just check on the service we made. I think it's, yeah, there we go. So we can see this service is now running. So this means you don't point your Bitcoin miner at Datum. You point it at simple proxy, which is actually reachable on your LAN, and then that relays all the traffic into Datum. That's how it works. So this is the simple proxy hack that we put together to make it so that you could point a miner at an IP address. So this would actually totally work at this point if Datum would just start. I wish it would, but we can't show that, unfortunately, because Bitcoin is now not going to work. Then there's one more thing to mention, actually, now that I think of it. If you'd had Bitcoin Core before on your Start9 node, that's not going to work for Datum. You need the NOTs package. There's a bunch of reasons for that. Bitcoin Core does technically support creating block templates and will work for Datum users, but not in the Start9 package, because there's no way in the Start9 Core package to get Bitcoin to promptly tell Datum that new blocks have been found. And you need that as a miner. You need to know immediately when new blocks are found. So there's this config option inside the Bitcoin NOTs package that doesn't exist inside the core package. And it's inside advanced, and it's under block notify. When you install Datum, if this is not there, it will throw an error and Datum will not start, because it needs this. ZMQ wasn't good enough. That exists in the core package, but it's not reliable enough for Datum. You need this to run. So this text has to go into the block notify field, which only exists on NOTs. And that
you
means,
may note that this is different. This is different from what is documented with Datum itself, because this is Start9 specific.
Yeah, this is unique to Start9. I think, well, Umbrel has the block notify thing as well, and that's not going to work with core either. So,
right, but this particular command is specific.
Yeah.
Hitting the notify endpoint on Datum will work from anything that does block notify with C or L, but yeah, this specific command is definitely Start9.
Right. So the fact that this exists means I didn't get an error, but it's very simple. If you had core before and you try to run Datum and it didn't work and it complained about block notify, then you do the auto configure to put this into NOTs and you save it. All that's a lot of fun, but Datum will still probably complain because it will think that this doesn't exist. And the way to fix that is you just go in here and you configure Datum again and you save it again, and then it grabs the RPC settings from the NOTs package and realizes it exists. It's a bit clunky, but this is now, like, this is a bug in StartOS, unfortunately, where sometimes the services get stuck stopping. So yeah, I think at this point I should just leave the Start9 server, because I'm not going to be able to do anything more with it. I think I've gone through all the config options. There's nothing in properties. Oh, actually there is. Sorry, this is NOTs. There's nothing in properties on Datum. Everything else is pretty simple. The instructions definitely follow those. It explains, it explains the need for why you've got to set up simple proxy, and that's more complicated than most services that you'd install on StartOS. But you just watched me do it all. It was pasting 6 commands into terminal, and it's working just fine. So I'm going to come out of there and I'll get ready for the Umbrel presentation. Interfaces would have been fun to show you those, but that's not available, unfortunately, because Datum would have to start for me to be able to show the gateway. But I'll be able to show that gateway on Umbrel, so we're still going to be able to see it. All right, let's get rid of that for now, and we'll go over to Umbrel. So on Umbrel, you're gonna go into applications, and you can just search for Bitcoin, and you have Bitcoin Node, which is actually just core. Then you have Bitcoin Knots, which is labeled actually what it is, and you would install this. Shout out to Leo Half for packaging this whole thing. Knots works great on Umbrel. Unfortunately, it's going to run in parallel with Bitcoin Core. If you have that, it can't run in as a substitute for it. Though actually, no, they have fixed that in the latest Umbrel. I take that back. So you can just run Knots on Umbrel and it will work. It will integrate with all other services like ElectRS and Fulcrum and all that stuff. So yeah, don't be afraid. You can run Knots on your Umbrel. If you know what you're doing, you can SSH in and move the blockchain from the core directory to the Knots directory, so you don't need to resync. But make sure you stop the service first, because it will cause database corruption if you don't do that. Moving blockchains around is always a pain. So Bitcoin Knots.
And note that when you stop a node, it may take several minutes to actually fully.
Yeah, when you stop a node,
shut down.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. Yeah, so this is what the GUI looks like for what they call Bitcoin Node, but this is Knots inside the Umbrel interface. Sorry for the light mode. Then you would install Datum on top of that. So you'd go to the App Store and it's going to auto-configure itself. Yeah, so we can open this and actually see the dashboard here. So this is just basic monitoring. You can't do any configuration in this. That will come one day. But with this Umbrel, I can actually mine because it's synced. So I'm going to get to doing that now. You'll see there are 0 clients at the moment, and I'm going to try and point my S9 to it. So I get the IP address of the Umbrel, which, I mean, that's probably in here. It would be nice if it was. There we go. Yeah, I have the local IP address helpfully listed here. So all I would do is point this at this address here. I'm going to turn off this. Oops. Let's just no. What are we at here? Copy. So I'm going to point this at the Umbrel. And then what port did I actually set up for it? I'm going to have to look at that. I'm going to SSH in here. And then make a note of how I'm doing this, because you're going to want to SSH into the Umbrel to change some of the settings anyway. So here's the port. Yeah, I set this one to 2336, which is not the default port, but reasons. So this should be fine. On, please. Now we can go back here and see if we're alive here, but I don't think it's liking that. Am I actually running here? Sorry, bear with me, guys. Any reason you could think of why this would not work? I might need to restart Datum. Well, this isn't a real Bitcoin address, is it? So let's go through the config options, because that's probably what's up here. Inside, so SSHing into your Umbrel is not super hard. You saw what I did there. You just SSH Umbrel or umbrel.local on some machine on the same local area network as your Umbrel. And it's going to ask you for the dashboard password. Then here you go. You're SSH'd in, and you saw me. You go into the Umbrel directory, into the app data directory, into, there are two things in there, Bitcoin knots and datum. You go into datum and then data. Inside here, well, there's a settings directory, and inside there you've got the configuration file. Unlike StartOS, there's no GUI, right? So in StartOS, I went through the settings for datum, and there's a config GUI. So you can put in your Bitcoin address here within, there's no need to SSH into the Start9 apart from when you're setting up simple proxy. So, yeah, you said to restart the, you know, the Brains OS. That isn't usually necessary. I see someone advising that. That I've changed pools a lot. This is something up with the, I mean, I can do a quick action restart boss miner. Let's see if that works. I don't think that's the issue. Anyway, are we started here? Yeah, this is running. Troubleshoot should give me some logs. Yeah, all right. It's, why are we listening on port 21,000? Anyone know why that might be? Luke, do you know if
Isn't that the dashboard?
Is that the dashboard?
I mean, that's what I saw you using as the
Yeah,
dashboard.
you're right. It is. Does it say what the port? Oh, this should not be unknown gish hash either, by the way. But that's, well, you need to fix the datum package. Does it say what port the Stratum server is in here?
Not in that log, no.
All right. So let's get into the. So here's how you would set everything. So I'm going to copy what I did with the Start9 server. So I'll get a Bitcoin address. You know, I'll just use this Bitcoin address. And that goes in here. Actually, no, I do need to use Nano for this, because for some reason it's just completely bizarre when I use Vim in Umbrel. I don't know why. So there we put a Bitcoin address. Here I would put, you know, you can put Ocean if you want, and it will be overwritten with that. So this is like S9 on Umbrel. I'll just write that in there for my secondary Coinbase tag, and that would be, you know, what shows up here. Where did all that go? Yeah, that would be what shows up here. That's under secondary tag. All this sensible defaults 2336 is the port I'm using at the moment, so it doesn't clash with the Start9. That's why I put it at that. Not that that necessarily means anything. And pooled mining only is set to true by default. All of this is default. I haven't touched anything here except change the port and put in a Bitcoin address here, and the Coinbase tag secondary, just personalize that. You can just leave that as datum miner if you want. Okay. These. All right. I'll let. Oh shit! What am I doing here? Okay. So we've set up the config there. Now we want to restart Datum with the new config. And apologies, I'm not super familiar with Umbrel's UI, so I should be able to just restart this now. This never mind, and still not entirely sure why that is, to be quite honest with you. This is definitely the local IP. Let me just test that. Umbrel at 192.168.0. What was it? 75. Yeah, right. That is definitely the local IP. So at this point, the Start9 should, the S9, it's so confusing. 75 was where I just went in, right? Yeah. So this is definitely the local IP of the Umbrel, and that is definitely the port it's using. So I am a little confused as to why that's not working. This is fun. Hopefully there's thousands of people watching as I just scratch my head. All right, any bright ideas, guys, why this isn't working? You want me to ping it?
After anything the config, did you restart the datum?
What's that? You're breaking up too much.
Did you restart the datum gateway after you changed the config?
Yeah, that just restarted now. Let's take a look at the logs now. Yeah, it's working. It's sending to 0 clients. I'm definitely doing something dumb here.
The S9's on the correct network, I assume.
Yeah. I mean, I have a production box, like an S9, a Start9 production box. What is the IP of that, actually? But there's not really much point showing that, to be honest. But it will show the S9 mining, so I guess that's worth doing. That would be 59. This is my production box, my Start9 production box. Unfortunately, I can't show that on this stream. That should just work. Let's see if it becomes happy now. Yeah, right. See, it's immediately alive. So, yeah, there's something up with the Umbrel.
Did the Umbrel one require some kind of forwarder as well? Like, is it not using 23336? Is it using something else?
I don't believe so. No, it doesn't, and we've tested it and it works. I'm very confident that this should work. So I can look at the logs maybe, but this unfortunately should work, and the fact that it isn't is perplexing to me because all this has been tested. Could just be an Umbrel thing.
Maybe try rebooting the Umbrel system.
Sure. So everything's okay with Datum's config because it's starting up and it's not complaining about invalid JSON or anything. So I'm confident Datum's running right. It is, yes, it's definitely on the same network. But I'm hesitant to show that on stream, my whole Ubiquiti setup thing. This should be up now. All right, yeah, we're up. All right, so this is looking good. Let's see if Bitcoin's gonna. Yeah, Bitcoin looks good. Oh, I love the Raspberry Pi 5 with an NVMe. So quick. So Bitcoin is happy. Datum. Let's take a look at that. Datum looks happy. Sending to 0 Stratum clients. And S9 unhappy. We're still mining, actually, but I think that's just brains stealing electricity from me. This might be a brains issue, actually, because it takes forever to sort of try the pool again. Are you familiar with brains, Jason? I'm only kidding about brains, guys. I think I need to like.
It should just work.
I find that if pool 1 is down and it goes back to whatever brains does mining wise, all right, I think that would like trigger it to actually work. No to both the things that were just mentioned, by the way. Default port, good point. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's just that. That could be a simple. No, it would show us alive immediately if it was a port issue.
No, you have to change the port in Datum too.
All right, good point.
I'm wondering if the Umbrel package guys actually coded that in somewhere.
Yeah, it may be some kind of firewall that only allows that one port through.
Yeah, that would make sense. And then it's just me being stupid. Because
it's the same thing. We have the issue where we have to run a proxy on the Start9, so it would make sense that Umbrel is similar in that respect.
Yeah, so let's restart this and see if we can get things a bit happier. Logos. So it is Umbrel's working relatively well because Datum's getting block templates from the knots node. We do the package hasn't been quite. Wait a minute, my S9 started making a lot of noise. Alive, you were right. It's my fault, guys. Sorry about that. I was trying to use a non-standard port for Datum. Okay, so we're now mining with an S9 pointed at our Datum node. So we'll take a look in here and you see one client. This is the IP of the S9. Yeah, Umbrel, Zach and Blockchain Geek, you are correct, guys. Thank you for pointing that out. The Umbrel network firewall port suggestion you made is completely correct. I was trying to just use a different port and naively thought it would just work. So yeah, it's just me being dumb. Don't let my idiocy make reflect on Ocean in general. So yeah, up here we're mining. It's going to take a while to find a share because this is only an S9, and this is the generated work. Okay, so we just found a share. Cool. So I'm currently mining to Electron's address just for OPSEC, but I could make, I could do something fun here and make a. Let's just give them silliest worker worker name ever. All right, I'm going to change it to that. Don't need to actually do that.
Should be using the Samurai donation address for testing.
That's a great point. Do we have a hot link for that? What would that even be? Where's the Samurai donation address? I'm not going to be able to remember that. Anyone want to just find it and paste it in the chat?
There it is. The BC1Q8QCS.
Fantastic. I'm going to mine to that.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, so open the dashboard and search it.
No, I got it. Jason posted it already.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. So what shall I call it? What worker name shall I donate to Samurai with?
Datum demo.
All right. So we got that. Hopefully we find a share within a couple of minutes. And then I can go to this address on Ocean. Stick it in here. All right. So this is the Samurai donation address. Well, we were getting some enthusiasm there. Brett is watching our stream and thanks me for the one share we submitted to the Electron address. Don't spend it all at once, Brett. So yeah, this is the Samurai donation address. And we'll see a new worker pop up here in a minute. We already got 2 pages of workers, all these fun things. Do we have any shares submitted yet? It's an S9, guys, so it's going to take a while to submit a share. Once this gets above the difficulty there, we know it's an unlucky share. This is just like mining blocks at just lower difficulty. So,
what do you mean? Your next share is going to be a block?
Is it? Oh man,
Yeah.
I just found 2 shares. Whoa, that was a lucky share. All right, so now on the stats we should have on Ocean, it should show up with what did I call it again? Datum demo. How quickly should we expect that to show up here on the stats?
It can take a minute, maybe 2.
Page 2 has nothing on it, which we need to fix. Oh wait, does it? No, it doesn't. Sorry, that's not broken anymore. I thought it was. We need about 60 seconds, and then we should see the worker show up on Ocean now that we've actually submitted a share. There's a question. What port does need to be forwarded to the outside world on StartOS if the miner not on the same network? It's the same whether you're on your LAN or whether you're on your local area network. The IP of the box will change. That's all. So if your Start9 server locally is 192.168, whatever, then and your miner's on your local area network, then you point to 192.168, and then you just add :2334. Sorry, that's where simple proxy is listening, and then it will forward over. If you forward 23334 on your router and you're mining with a host somewhere else, and you want to point your hosted miners to your home IP address, then you need to set up dynamic DNS probably, unless your ISP gives you a static IP, and then you point your hosted miner to that dynamic DNS, and then it uses that to find your home IP address, whatever it is, and then :23334. I hope that makes sense. So I would demonstrate that, but that's just a bit out of scope for this video, unfortunately. Did I explain that right, guys? Any input there?
Sounds fine to me. It's going to vary from router to router exactly how you do that, but other than that,
Yeah. I would have just said 23334. I wouldn't have gone into all the details, but so you went well above and beyond.
All right. Well, the point is, you're not using a local IP for your hosted miners.
Yeah.
You've got to use your home internet's like wider internet IP. But it is very possible, and there are people that do that. You can totally, if you have hosted miners, which is pretty typical for most people mining, and you want to point them at your local Datum server running on StartOS, you can totally do it. And I do it myself. It's a lot of fun. This is not showing up on the stats, or what did I call it? Datum demo. We should be well up there now. We found 3 shares. So any bright ideas why that's... Oh, no, there it is. Datum demo. We're there. So this is me mining on Ocean. I have now contributed a whopping 1 Satoshi, assuming we find a block. No, that would be 8 blocks worth, right? The next 8 blocks will give Samurai 1 sat. And that's me. That's me mining to it from my S9. That's what it is. And we can see on the Umbrel, we should be able to look in the logs. You can see now that it was sending to 0 Stratum clients initially. When we connected the S9, it started sending to 1 Stratum client. So, and this gives you some info around what it's sending. These are the block templates it's creating, how much Bitcoin is in them in total. You can just watch these logs. This is like level 2 logging, I think. Or you can go to the dashboard, which, you just click on Datum in Umbrel, and it will open up this dashboard. It tells you got 1 connection that refers to the miner, not the pool. 1 subscription, that's, the S9 has subscribed to this Datum Gateway for work. Active threads, I mean, I'm not going to go into that much detail, but...
No, this is the same as you would see if you were using a Start9 and you launched the dashboard.
Yeah, so if you're using Datum Gateway on Start9, you click this blue button, or you go into the service and click Launch UI, none of which I can do. I'm going to start this because why not? You would get this exact same screen. Everything here is the same. And then you can go to clients as well. This would have a whole list of miners if we had more. On a Raspberry Pi 4, you could have thousands of miners because Datum is so lightweight. Threads, anything interesting in there? Not really. And then Coinbase, this is going to show you what the Coinbase transaction looks like on the block you're working on. So I can show you here. This is no, that's not what I want, is it? This is 4 blocks ago from Ocean, 8 days ago. We found a block, and this was what the Coinbase looked like, right? And this is when the block actually gets found, but this is in the Datum Gateway. It shows you what it looks like before it gets found, and this will keep changing, of course. So yeah, that's it. That is basically the rundown. This is how you run it on Umbrel. This is how you run it on Start9. Start9 needs that additional configuration inside, that you have to set up using terminal. And Start9 036 won't require that additional stuff. It will work as easily as the Umbrel, but it will have all the nice Start9 elements where you can configure stuff in the GUI and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's move on to questions. Unless, Luke, do you have anything you want to add? Anything I missed?
No, but it might be worth pointing out that even if someone decides to do the enterprise setup that we're talking about, the next one, they can still use the Start9 hardware if they want to have a backdoor free machine for that.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm getting confident enough to say that, because Start9 is a bit more experimental, StartOS, than running just a Debian box, which is what we usually have people use for the Datum boxes we help them create or build and mine to. And we have people with, you've seen Penguin blocks, you've seen Electron Energy blocks, you've seen Barefoot mining blocks. All of those are with, those are just, we're going to go into that in the stream on Friday. And that's the enterprise, thing. But I don't want to imply that the StartOS setup isn't a serious solution at this point, because it's working really well. And we have hundreds of people using it, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, my point was simply that even if you do want to use a regular Debian or Ubuntu, you can still put that on the Start9 box, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, so you would just buy the server pure from Start9 and then flash Debian onto it?
Right. If you prefer to use Debian for whatever reason.
I don't know the implications of that, to be honest. I think the Intel management engine is disabled. Like what StartOS give you if you buy a server pure is it uses Pure OS as a base OS that goes underneath StartOS. And that is where the Intel management engine disabling happens. It's done at the software level, not at the hardware level. So I don't know how if you installed Debian over the top of it, I don't know if that would persist. So you might lose that advantage there, but I don't know, unfortunately. You can also just buy I don't know. I think Purism are actually not doing super well at the moment, actually. So you might not be able to buy one of these sanitized Intel NUCs from Purism anymore and just use Pure OS. But Pure OS is probably Debian under the hood, so you could probably just build a Datum box on a Pure OS server. But again, that would have nothing to do with Start9 at this point. So we have a couple of questions. Mining is configured on your miner will be paid out as a directed payment regardless of how much work was conducted. Thinking of moving my BitX to Ocean. I don't know how to interpret that question exactly. I mean, of course, your payout depends on how much work you do, right? So we've submitted 6 shares here. So that manifests on the stats page, so this is slowly going to go up, the estimated rewards in window. Obviously, there's an S9 miner that, is probably, what's its hash rate? I don't know. It's 246. We got about 6.4. Yeah, 6.4 terahash. So that's like the equivalent of 10 bit axes, as I know the bit axe. That's around 600 gigahash. So, it's not going to earn a great deal, of course, and you want to set up lightning payments, and that's done in configuration here. But yeah, there's nothing like the way it works on Ocean is if you're configured for lightning, we will attempt to pay you no matter what. And if you're not configured for lightning, once you meet thresholds, again, the payment will happen automatically.
There is a subtle difference if you're using Datum, which is that your Datum Gateway will attempt, as long as you meet the threshold, it will attempt to always include you in the generated coins, even if your miner has limitations.
Yeah. Also, might be worth mentioning, you might keep appearing offline.
That generated thing only applies if you find the block, though.
Right.
Yes. Right. And this series of tutorials, JD wants me to mention something. I'm just going to read this out. This series of tutorials is our V0, our Datum setup series. A larger guided walkthrough set is coming, but we wanted to get this out there in a form that people could use to ask questions. I don't know if that was even English, JD.
The point is that people can ask questions while we're doing this live.
Someone's saying StartOS is Ubuntu based. It isn't, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure it's not.
Someone else asked why are we suggesting Debian instead of Red Hat based, and there's probably no particular reason. If you prefer Red Hat based, it should work just as well with Datum. But that's more of a topic for the next one where we go over enterprise setup.
Yeah, today's thing with Umbrel and Start9 kind of assumes like this is the home-friendly setup, right? So you don't need to be configuring stuff like we talked about in the first video last week, and you don't need to worry about what we're going to talk about in the next stream, but they're still good. It contains lots of relevant info, especially when it comes to configuring knots. But using Umbrels and using Start9s isn't something I would fundamentally recommend to like a guy with multiple exahash. You should actually like custom build a box at that point with the most tried and true operating system around, right? You want to use something that's very well tested with millions of eyes on it. StartOS and Umbrel are still, they're much smaller teams. They're much younger projects, so there is more that can go wrong. So for BitX guys that want to mine and make their own blocks at home, this is an absolutely perfect setup. But for enterprise level, that is the next stream.
I think it's worth pointing out that part of the purpose of setting up Datum to do this is that you have those control. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather today. Is that you have those controls over the template, and you probably should go through and look at the settings for knots for the template that you're making.
Yeah. So let's talk about. There is a custom GUI in Umbrel for the Bitcoin node. So let's go in here and take a look and see what's actually configurable. I think Leo actually added all the fun stuff. Yeah, we got it all. Okay, so we went through all this in the last stream, talking about what all these things do: reject parasites, reject tokens, relay non-pay to script hash multisig. So all these are sensible defaults in knots, right? Because knots has been made by people that want to make, blocks that aren't actively attempting to hurt the network. So you got all this stuff in here. None of this configuration exists in Bitcoin Core as it stands, and it certainly doesn't exist in any of the packages, because that's downstream of that. So it doesn't exist in the Umbrel package in Core or in the Start9 package in the Core package. But it does exist in here. So you should go in here if you want to. I don't think we should repeat all of the explanations around this because it takes well over an hour going through all this stuff. But go and look at the first stream we did last week. JD will help us make that well known and probably edit it so it's much more consumable. But yeah, all this stuff in here you're going to want to set. Like this controls how big the blocks are that you make, what how you, I don't know, what you can set data carrier cost to. You can set that as a multiple so people can spam, but they have to pay a lot more rather than, or at least equal to just transactions do, rather than give them a witness discount, and they just disproportionately use that. I digress. But yeah, here's all the settings. Like Jason said, you have a GUI for setting all this stuff in Start9. So the last stream we did, when we were configuring knots, we had to do it all in the knots GUI itself or in the bitcoin.conf. Here you have this separate GUI here that isn't the actual knots GUI. This is an Umbrel GUI, and you can use that to do the settings you want. Yeah, as Paranoid Crypto Anarchist has pointed out in the chat, the stream from last week went into a lot of detail around how to configure knots, and it's definitely worth looking at. All right, so please tune in on Friday for the enterprise setup. That's not going to be Umbrel or Start9. It's going to be something that is, it's going to be is what we would recommend, as I said, for the biggest miners that want to have like a rock solid setup and don't want to, be installing mempool and, other services that you can install on an Umbrel, which are all a lot of fun, but like Nextcloud and all that stuff. But this is not, you don't want to be running a bunch of like Noster apps and stuff like that on something you're using to generate templates for thousands of miners that, you're that kind of level of setup. So yeah, I think without further ado, we should wrap it up there. The whole point here is it's supposed to be a simple, trivial setup. So let's not go into meticulous detail here. You can always message us anywhere on Noster or Twitter or email or our Discord to get any help setting these things up. We're happy to walk you through it. And we're excited to get more miners creating their own templates. So yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Waves of fortune keep us spinning around.